Obscure Characters Month 2025 continues this episode with the story of a bot who leapt from the comic page to the toy store shelf for the very first time this year. These are the basics on the Decepticons' Doctor of Despair, Flatline. Flatline was an original character created by writer Chris Mowry for IDW Publishing's series of tie-in comic books to the live-action Transformers movies. He was a Decepticon medic and mad scientist, invented by Mowry for an early draft of the 2008 miniseries The Reign of Starscream, in which he would have used his surgical abilities to stitch together a bunch of construction vehicle transformers to create the combiner Devastator. Unfortunately, when Hasbro requested that Devastator be removed from the comic, likely to avoid conflicting with his upcoming appearance in the 2009 movie Revenge of the Fallen, it led to Flatline also being dropped from the story. Still, the character stuck with Mowry, and he would later try to bring Flatline into IDW's main line of Generation 1 based comics. While working on story ideas, he asked artist Ben Templesmith to create a design for a G1 version of Flatline, with the alternate mode of a 1960s Cadillac hearse. But the story never happened, and the design went unused. After these false starts, Mowry was eventually able to bring Flatline into the movie universe in 2010, in issue number 6 of the miniseries Tales of the Fallen, with an all-new movie-style Cybertronian mode designed for the character by artist Alex Milne. In this story, Flatline was the medical officer at a Decepticon outpost on an alien planet, where he was putting his skills to work trying to create new warriors for the Decepticon army. His experiments weren't going well. His efforts to accelerate the development of the station's cache of embryonic protoform Decepticons to bring them online faster had resulted in the death of every subject. And trying to reprogram 2 captive Autobots, Skids and Mudflap, had left them brain-scrambled dimwits. When his commander, Thundercracker, brought him another Autobot, RC, Flatline tried a new approach and attempted to use RC's spark to give life to 3 separate protoforms at once. But the experiment backfired. Instead of getting 3 new Decepticon warriors, Flatline instead got RC's mind in control of 3 bodies simultaneously. No match for the enraged Autobot, Flatline beat a quick retreat while RC was occupied battling Thundercracker, and covered his escape with explosive charges that destroyed the outpost. This was Flatline's only major role in the Movieverse comics. His only other appearances were cameos in a pair of 2011 prequel stories by writer John Barber. Notably, Barber built upon Mowry's story to reveal that Flatline's experiment with the 3 protoforms hadn't just involved RC, but also the sparks of her sisters, Chromia and Elita 1, and had resulted in the 3 siblings' minds being fused together into a shared consciousness. Barber's use of Flatline continued in 2013, when he introduced a Generation 1 incarnation of the character in the pages of IDW's Robots in Disguise comic, for which artist Andrew Griffith created a new G1-style design for him based on the Transformers Generations Trail Cutter toy released the same year. Set after the end of the war, at a point in time when Starscream had conned his way into being ruler of Cybertron, the comic featured Flatline as Starscream's chief medic, and he would appear in small roles on and off for the next 4 years, working on various projects for his new leader. In 2014, the name Flatline was also used for a Decepticon medic in the Transformers Universe MMORPG video game, but he was unrelated to the comic's character, being instead a hammer-wielding warrior who transformed into a flatbed truck. This Flatline was never really seen by a mass audience, as Universe was shut down at the end of that year without ever leaving beta testing. In 2019, IDW rebooted their Generation 1 comics, introducing a new universe in which writer Brian Ruckley offered a new take on Flatline. The series was set on Cybertron just as the Great War was beginning, and depicted Flatline as an unaffiliated Transformer working at the medical center in the Autobot city of Iacon. Flatline's code of medical ethics meant he felt honor-bound to treat any Cybertronian regardless of their faction. Thus, he would reluctantly help the Decepticons when they called on him for aid. When the Decepticons seized control of Iacon, the Autobots abandoned the city, but Flatline remained, believing it was his moral duty to stay and care for the Decepticon patients that they had left behind. Unfortunately, for all his good intentions, Flatline didn't live to see the end of the series, as his altruism put him in a position that allowed the spirit of Exarchon, a mad tyrant from Cybertron's past, to possess his body. Then, while in Exarchon's thrall, he was melted into a puddle of slag by the radioactive Decepticon, Sunstorm. Off the back of his role in this series, Flatline was added to the Earth Wars mobile game in 2022, with a design that was based even more directly on Generations Trailcutter, sharing the Autobots' SUV alternate mode. He had the same personality in the game as in the comic, providing battlefield medical care for Autobots and Decepticons alike, even when the two sides were at war. Most recently, Flatline finally got his first ever toy in 2025's Age of the Primes. He was a retool and recolor of the Autobot medic Red Alert from the same line, with a new head based on Andrew Griffith's comic design, and transformed into an emergency SUV. Rendered in plastic for the first time a decade and a half after his introduction, Flatline makes our hearts beat faster with the thrill of seeing an obscure character finally get their time in the toy spotlight. And those are the basics on Flatline. What do you think of this medical menace? Share your diagnosis in the comments. See you next week for another installment of Obscure Characters Month, which you can get early ad-free access to if you become a channel member or support the show on Patreon.